Tonight, a community in mourning after a tragic house fire kills 3 children in Brampton.
I've seen those kids growing up.
My brother and me used to play with them at the park right over there.
The victims, all under the age of 16, will take you live to the scene and bring you the latest in the investigation. Plus,
we're not out of the woods yet, but we're taking a cautious approach to move forward.
Restaurant, gyms, and other indoor places will be reopened by the end of the month as Ontario begins easing COVID-19 restrictions. And
I think we're putting people's safety at risk. I think we've hurt people.
How long are Toronto residents waiting for a 911 operator to answer their call? The results of a CBC News investigation may surprise you. Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. We begin in Brampton, where a community is in shock and grief after a morning townhouse fire claimed the lives of 3 young boys. The fire marshal is continuing its investigation tonight, which they say will take some time. Our Dale Manukduk joins us from the scene near Torbram Road and Clark Boulevard. And Dale, neighbors there, some who knew the victims, just in disbelief tonight.
Yeah, Kelda, there have been people crying, laying flowers along the perimeter of the caution tape. You'll see here a small memorial starting to build, several bouquets of flowers, lit candles as well. One neighbor we spoke with was so visibly shaken he could barely speak because his family has a personal relationship to the children. It happened at this townhouse behind me here around 9:15 this morning. It was engulfed in flames. 3 boys were transported to hospital with critical injuries and did not survive. They were 15, 12, and 9 years old.
A tragic fire taking the lives of 3 neighborhood kids, rocking this Brampton community.
But I've seen those kids growing up. In the summer, they would, come over to our house and,
I'm a mother of 3 myself, so my heart goes out to the family.
Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown detailed the horrific moments the 911 call was made from the 9-year-old boy.
I do know the child called from inside the house when the fire was consuming the home, pleading for help, unable to escape the home on their own.
Peel police arrived minutes before the fire department and were aware the 3 boys were trapped inside.
These officers attempted valiantly several times to enter into the home, both from the front and the rear of the building, but unfortunately were not successful. The flames were just simply too much.
Police say the boys are related. The mother of the household was driving her younger child to school when the fire happened and is not being investigated for neglect. Police say it is legal to leave children in the care of a 15-year-old.
As a parent myself of 2 children, I can't begin to imagine the heartache that she's going through.
It was also a tough day for the Brampton Fire Department. Chief Bill Boyce sending his condolences to those affected.
They did absolutely everything they could. We had 1 firefighter injured with a non-serious injury now, thankfully.
Ontario's fire marshal is now in charge of the early investigation. They have not determined the cause of the fire.
We haven't even got inside the building yet. A lot of work being done on the outside, gathering as much information as we can.
And the Ontario Fire Marshal says the investigation will take several days. Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford also addressing the tragedy, offering his condolences, and says he'll reach out to see if he can be of any help to the family. The Peel District School Board confirming that the children were students at its schools, tweeting, "We are deeply saddened by the news that these 3 students passed away." The teenagers attended Judith Nyman Secondary School and Earnscliffe Senior Public School. The 9-year-old was a student at a local public school as well. And Kelda, the Mayor Patrick Brown confirming to CBC News that 2 of the boys were special needs students.
Such a tragedy. Thanks so much, Dale. That's our Dale Manukduk live for us tonight. The fire marshal is also now investigating after a man and a woman died in a fire near Bloor and Dufferin last night.
Toronto Fire Service removed 2 occupants from the building. 1 was pronounced deceased last evening, and the other occupant was pronounced deceased early this morning.
The fire broke out around 7 last night in a home on Gladstone Avenue. Officials say fire crews faced intense heat as they tried to rescue the 2 people inside the home. A cause is being investigated. Fire officials are also working to determine if the residents had working smoke detectors. Well, it's official. The province will begin relaxing COVID-19 restrictions at the end of the month. The Premier saying today the situation in hospitals has stabilized enough to allow restaurants, bars, and gyms to reopen and capacity limits to be increased in other businesses. Chris Glover has what you need to know.
This was Lori Hall's dance studio prior to this month's COVID restrictions.
Breathe.
Forcing her entirely online. Now she's the one breathing again.
The teases all week, gives you that yo-yo of, is it us? Will we open? Is it just restaurants? What will it be? Will it be 25%? Will it be 50%? We've got like 18 spreadsheets to figure out what kind of opening we might get and when it is.
The last time that you and I spoke, you were crying. You were so upset about where things were at. How are you feeling today?
Well, I've cried up until 11:35.
Well, good morning.
The tears stopped as Ford started.
We aren't out of the woods yet, but we're taking a cautious approach to move forward.
Most indoor public settings, including restaurants, will be allowed to reopen to 50% capacity January 31st, and arenas will be capped at 500 people. By February 21st, the plan would see capacity restrictions lifted where proof of vaccination is required, and arenas would amp up to 50% capacity. And by mid-March, all capacity limits on indoor spaces would be lifted.
Basically, what we've done is we've moved businesses from the brink of bankruptcy because they were locked down and signed them up for perhaps a couple of months of just losing money every day that they're open.
The Premier says proof of vaccination will be in place indefinitely, but there are no plans to change the definition of fully vaccinated to 3 doses or more. The relaunch of the reopening is due to COVID hospitalizations in Ontario down for the 2nd day in a row.
We anticipate by the 31st that there will be ongoing improvements, but February will be difficult as well.
February is when ICU COVID patients are expected to peak. Until that becomes more clear, non-urgent surgeries will remain paused.
We want to get back on track with them as soon as we can.
The backlogs are massive, and yet nothing from Mr. Ford to give these folks hope.
Criticism from the opposition also included a failure to explain when or how testing would ramp back up.
We do have good capacity within the PCR system to review our testing criteria at present.
The chief medical officer only hinting expanded PCR testing could be coming and promising more rapid tests soon.
We still don't know any data about what makes our businesses dangerous or worrisome when it comes to COVID.
But for businesses like Hall's, still unclear what specific threshold closed them to begin with.
As you can see, it's going to be 11 days. I've got to count down.
She's just grateful to have something to dance about again. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
As the province gets ready to open up again, Toronto's medical officer of health is noting while the city is seeing a decrease in test positivity, it's not easing the pressure on hospitals.
Since Tuesday, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and outbreaks have risen, and healthcare system capacity remains strained.
She adds the trend in hospitalizations will likely continue even after cases peak. And for those who are unvaccinated, she says the hospitalization rate is 4 times higher and ICU admission 8 times higher than those who have 3 shots. About 65% of eligible Torontonians have received their booster doses. And meanwhile, in Mississauga, Mayor Bonnie Crombie says they're seeing cases plateau.
Locally, Trillium Health Partners is still grappling with several hundred patients with COVID, but the good news is that staffing levels are improving, with a substantial decrease in the number of staff off due to illness or isolation.
Peel's medical officer of health adds a new vaccine clinic at Rockwood Mall has also just opened with walk-ins accepted. Reinforcements have arrived in Toronto to help clear the city streets after Monday's massive blizzard. Fleets of dump trucks have been brought in to help clean up the snow. The city is also reaching out to residents, asking for help locating any areas that still haven't been cleared. Greg Ross has those details.
The city is in the process of clearing away giant piles of snow that now line most Toronto streets.
Snow removal operations, that is, where we truck away the snow to get it right off the streets, started last night, and this is expected to take several days.
Today, crews work their way along St. Clair. The work will continue through the night.
Crews hope to tackle Bloor Street tonight for snow removal. This does have some noise associated with it when it happens at night, but I hope that people will show their understanding of this work that obviously they would like us to get done as soon as we can.
While this work has just begun, the city still hasn't finished plowing streets in some areas, and they're asking for help locating any they may have missed.
We opened up 311 to snow requests so that we can hear directly from residents about areas that need more snow plowing and clearing.
That includes public sidewalks.
That's kind of hit and miss, depending on where you're walking.
While some sidewalks have been cleared, many others have not.
I have a kid, so things like taking out the stroller and stuff like that's been a little bit more challenging.
It can be particularly bad at intersections where windrows left by snowplows are an obstacle.
You got to climb over a mound of snow to get over to the other side.
The snow removal is a little bit more difficult in some areas where cars are still parked on the street. In some cases, they've been barricaded in by the snowplow. In many areas, the city is providing friendly tows for cars parked legally. They're being moved out of the way to a nearby location. Cars parked illegally may be impounded or ticketed.
All of this work, along with continuing to respond to any further weather, is ongoing 24 hours a day until the job is done. There is no resting from this.
The city says after the cleanup is complete, they'll send out bylaw officers, and they will be prepared to ticket any landowner who hasn't cleared their walkways or driveways. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, first came the snow, then came the cold.
Yeah, so we are looking at lots of areas where it's quite slick because we've got that layer of ice kind of on top of some of the snow in areas that haven't been treated. So just need to use caution, but also need to protect yourself because exposed skin, when we're talking about temperatures and wind chills like this, you can get frostbite very, very quickly. So everybody needs to be all wrapped up, the kids as well, as they're off to school. Extreme cold warning then in place, and the alert as well for the city of Toronto as we're looking at those temperatures dipping down towards the minus 20s and into those minus 20s, but the wind chills close to minus 30. So daytime temperatures, look at some of these temperatures from 11 last night going towards midnight. They were actually kind of mild. We were at minus 7 at midnight and then dipping by 7 a.m. Yeah, as that colder air pushed in, and we struggled to get to like minus 12 for our high. But we do have the clear skies tonight. The sun will be back tomorrow, and we'll have a look at those temperatures to go along with it. There you go, in those wind chills, minus 21, feeling close to minus 30. Even tomorrow afternoon, feeling close to minus 15, Kelda.
Thanks so much, Colette. Two large-scale developments in Richmond Hill and Markham have some residents and municipal leaders worried. The Yonge North Subway extension and planned communities around the stops will bring up to 80,000 more people.
I think overall it's the scale of development that is about almost double what we've been planning for.
The communities will be built around two stations. The Bridge Subway Station community will be located just east of Yonge Street, south of Highway 407 in Markham. The high-tech Subway Station community will be just north of that in Richmond Hill. It's all part of a provincial push to create more housing and reduce suburban sprawl.
As long as we're managed effectively with parks, we have schools, we have hospitals, we have a walkable, livable area, we're creating vibrancy, we have investment in infrastructure. Woohoo! I'm all in favor of having growth.
Infrastructure Ontario says it's working with York Region and the public to refine the proposals. Both communities are expected to have new schools and parks. Welcome back. Seconds count. That's what we've always been told in the case of an emergency. But a CBC News investigation has found seconds are turning into minutes for some 911 callers in Toronto. Long wait times is an issue the city's police service said they were working to fix 2 years before the pandemic hit. But now, years later, the problem's still there. And as Angelina King reports, a 911 operator is now the one making the call for help.
Data obtained by CBC News reveals often people are waiting on hold, sometimes for between 2 and 4 minutes for a 911 operator to answer the phone. In one instance, on a Sunday evening in October, somebody waited for just over 10 minutes before their call was picked up. A 911 operator tells us that there just isn't enough staff and the existing employees are burnt out. Internal documents reveal that sometimes there are fewer than 10 people answering those phones for a city of nearly 3 million. And that operator that we spoke with, whose identity we are protecting, says they believe there are some instances when they think the public safety is at risk because of these long wait times.
It should be within just a few seconds, because those seconds mean everything. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say something. And I've been trying, but no one's been listening.
Toronto Police tell me that public safety is not at risk and that it's doing everything it can to ensure there's adequate staffing and to support existing employees. Plus, it says it's currently training 35 new 911 operators.
There's always going to be those peaks in call volume that create wait time. It's inevitable. So we use our historical data, like I said. We do our very best to match our workforce to our workflow.
Unlike Alberta and Quebec, there's no legislation or oversight here in Ontario mandating any sort of standard for 911 operations. There is a city audit underway looking into the Toronto call centre, and that's expected to be released later this year. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government has reached an agreement with the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation to hand over thousands more records on residential schools. Ottawa had been holding back the documents, citing legal obligations it had to third parties, including Catholic organizations that operated the federally funded institutions.
What we've seen over the last 5-6 months has shifted us away from a position of standing on our legal rights, which are rights, to our moral obligation, which is to get those documents out to the extent possible. This is not our information. This is not Canada's to hold and be the ultimate arbiter of, yet we are doing that.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller says the agreement outlines how and when Ottawa will send the historical documents to the Winnipeg-based centre. It will in turn make them available to residential school survivors and work to preserve them. And you are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline, mainly clear tonight with just a few cloudy periods. Very cold though, currently feeling like minus 21 in the city with that wind chill. Let's go back to Colette now for a more detailed look at your forecast. And Colette, need to take care out there tonight and the next few days with these extreme cold temperatures.
Yeah, that's right. And we looked at those extreme cold warnings and the alert a little bit earlier in the show. And so that's just something to know, that you just can't have exposed skin that freezes too quickly and you can end up with some skin damage. So we got to bundle everyone up. But I do also just want to point out we've got snowbanks, reduced visibility, then you're bundled up. The kids are bundled up. You can't see very well. Drivers and pedestrians, everybody needs to go back to what we learned as kids. OK, look both ways. Just be very, very careful. We all have to kind of look out for each other, especially when your visibility and your hearing gets, changed by having all these layers on. All right, so that's the cold. The temperatures do rebound. They're still going to be below seasonal, those daytime highs, but they rebound a little bit into the weekend, so that's why I'm saying cool instead of cold. And early next week, we could see some snowfall coming in. There's a chance Monday night into Tuesday of 5 to maybe close to 8 or 10 centimeters. Overnight, we're seeing those clearing skies. We get into sunshine tomorrow, but then Saturday, increase in cloudiness, so quite a bit of cloud cover. Winds will pick up. That'll start to drive some lake effects, so some flurries, especially later in the day towards the GTA and southwestern Ontario for later Saturday. You'll see that earlier, though, into cottage country. check out the wind chills because they're almost more important than these temperatures. -15 to -20. -15 will be the temperature in Windsor. The winds back off, but tomorrow daytime high up to -4 with some sun. So better day there. Very bitterly cold tonight, exception into St. Catharines there, where you get that cloud cover and a little flurry, and the lake helps you out a bit. But there are those temperatures coming up a little bit into the weekend, and then next week we'll be watching that next system. It's not going to be like the one we just had, Kelda, but could see some snow coming through again.
All right. Thanks so much, Colette. For those who use wheelchairs, snow-covered sidewalks are a barrier to getting anywhere. But in Little Italy this week, one high school student was able to get home on his own from school, thanks to the help of his neighbors.
I have a son who uses a wheelchair, and whenever sidewalks are not cleared, it means that he can't go anywhere. For a teenager, he's 15 years old, who is pretty independent, that's like devastating. With all the snow coming down, I was expecting that the city would come and clear the sidewalks. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, neither a day after the snowstorm nor 2 days after. My idea was, well, if the city doesn't help, then let's see if the neighborhood maybe can help. And I posted in our Facebook neighborhood group, basically explaining the situation. People that I didn't know at all, commented under my post saying, okay, I'm going to get out there and shovel.
My wife saw Patricia's post and, she was looking for some help, and we could help, so we did.
We often don't see people in wheelchairs out in the streets. We forget that snow removal is not just about a duty that we have to do, but it's actually a basic necessity for people who use mobility devices.
And finally tonight, an update to a story we brought you earlier this week. A mother whose water broke during Monday's major snowstorm has given birth to a baby girl. Lauren Ducey and her husband Matt were snowed into their home when her water broke. When their neighbor heard, he and his wife posted on Facebook asking people to come help shovel them out. This is how Matt described the response from neighbors when we spoke to him earlier this week.
5-10 minutes after, you see, the way I've explained it is like a Hallmark movie. You see everyone coming out of their house with their shovels. It was insane, just this huge community of people.
It wasn't until yesterday that the baby was finally born. Lauren and Matt are thanking everyone for their support. So cute. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.